I will share that with you.
Sorry, that was me. I always forget to start that recording. Let me stop sharing my screen, Eric, so you can
Okay.
share. And I've dropped the registration link for that Mastering Medicaid workshop into the chat now as well for anybody who would like it.
And I should have been better prepared for this. I'm trying to, because it's not online quite yet,
I
I'm
tell you,
still trying to
um,
find the mock-up.
oh, you're good. I actually have a couple other announcements, so let me
Can I come back?
go.
That would be
Yep,
perfect. Thank you.
let's do that. All right, so our other announcements are the Teen to Adult Healthcare Transition Summit, which will be in October. So if you haven't had a chance to register for this, that registration is open as well. And I'll include these links in the resources email also if you're not able to grab them now. And oh, that was my last announcement, Eric. So
Well, that was perfect because I just found my link. So
okay.
thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Give me just one moment here. And can you let me know if you are all seeing that? Perfect. So what this will allow you to do is you can select a county. So for example, let's say Salt Lake County, you can pick the health system, Common Spirit, Intermountain, University of Utah. You don't have to select that. Um, we can say whatever insurance uh, we would like to see, that the facility takes. This is a pediatrics specialty here, but if we put family medicine, and then we also want to look at a service age, we're looking for, groups that serve young adults. And let's just say we want to do an in-office visit. And it will give us this information here. It pulled these up. Obviously, this will be more robust as we have more folks participating in that. So if you know of providers that would like to be included in the database or particularly adult serving providers, please let us know. But if you click on the more info here, it actually pulls up a PDF, which ironically is not in our current Department of Health and Human Services colors. So we'll have to get that modified. But it will give you an actual link to their website. It tells you the insurances that they take. Did that one come up on the screen as well? When I changed, okay, languages, telehealth, bilingual staff, Spanish, right here, in office visits. Um, we asked some questions on the survey to ask, um, do you have these things? Do you have staff training, disability care, accessible adult changing tables, quiet waiting areas, etc.? Um, a lot of times folks just let things blank, and we don't know if that means they do or they don't have those things. So that's where we have the explanation here. NA means information is unknown or not available. And then after that, it talks about what the provider survey was all about, just so folks know, the types of questions we asked our providers. Every single one of the listings has this PDF. We have an amazing epidemiologist who works in our Birth Defect Network program. Her name is Aubrey Boyce, and she was kind enough to help us with our integrated services program to create this database. So we anticipate that this will be forthcoming, and once it's available, we'll make a formal announcement with actual links to the production side of this. Are there any questions? Okay, if you think of anything, my email, Athena has that. You can reach out, and I'd be happy to discuss more of this later on. Thanks.
That's great, Eric. What a good resource coming. So you said it's not live. yet, but providers can
No.
submit their information.
Yes.
Can
Yes.
you drop?
And just so you know, we will be doing follow-up with providers periodically over the next couple of years, well, as long as they're on the database, to make sure that their information is still correct. So we will have a process, every 6 months, once a year, whatever, just to say, hey, can you review your your listing, and can you verify that this information is correct, so that we have the most current information there.
Great. And where can people go to uh, add their information to the directory?
So the information sheet that you provided has a QR code. Um, when you click on that QR or you scan that QR code, it will go right
That one.
to
Go ahead.
right to the survey. Let me just see here quickly. Did
Perfect.
not give me a link to the survey. Just off of what I had from our epidemiologist. But the QR code will take folks right
Okay.
to the survey for
Great.
completion.
Wonderful. Well, I'll
I agree
include
with you.
that on the Trello board as well. Okay, so we have a couple minutes for brainstorming if anybody else wants to bring up a case or a resource that you're aware of, an event happening you want to share with the group. Kaylee, go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to share the case management training schedule coming up. This Friday, we have a housing training. So we'll be having Utah Housing Coalition, um, Community Action, and then the Community Justice Advocate Program, all presenting on their housing resources, mediation programs, how to navigate that, some best practices, because I think we're all great in like healthcare stuff, but then when it comes to the housing stuff, that's another whole nother monster. So how can we provide some holistic support for these families? So that training is not just open to case managers, it's open to anybody and everybody that wants to attend. So please feel free to share that far and wide if you'd like to.
Great. Thank you, Haley. And she's dropped the schedule there into the chat, and I'll get it linked as well. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share?
This is Dora from Shriners. Hello.
Uh,
We have a brand new service at Shriners, and I will be sharing more details in the upcoming months. But it's in the Motion Analysis Center. So just a reminder, that is where they do full studies, in-depth studies on the patient's gait, on how they walk. So same technology they use in Hollywood and video games. They put the sensors on the patient, and the floor is censored as well. So it's in feedback is showing them what tendons and ligaments are being triggered. But the new service is back to sports. So if a patient has had a sports injury for knee, patella, ankle, they will be doing a full evaluation on those patients and give that feedback to the provider to see if they're ready to go back to sports. So it'll prevent future injuries. But I am working on with a lot of your clinics to set up meetings so that Amy Shukra, who is over all the motion analysis centers in the Northwest, can have one-on-one time with the providers to go in more depth with that. But that is ready and live. They are seeing patients for that. If you want information before I get to your clinic on more details, you can reach out to me, or you can send that directly already for them to be seeing those patients. But that is all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dora. Okay, we're going to move into our learning session, which today is about special education services. We have Thelma Davies joining us today. She's a parent consultant with the Utah Parent Center, and I am going to go ahead and turn the time over to her.
Okay, my name is Thelma Davies. I am going to present to you today. We all about special education, and we have a great presentation for you about that. So let me get this started. And let's see. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. Sorry, okay. Just give me a second. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical problems here. Can anybody see it or no? Because it says it's not.
We can see the presentation. We're not seeing like a single slide for it, but
Okay. Okay, let's try it again.
show button up at the in the top right hand corner, that might get you the view you're looking for.
Okay, let me grab it. Okay, sorry. Here we go. I'm going to try something really fast. Okay.
I am putting Thelma on the spot here too, because I was supposed to log on a lot earlier and give her time to test this ahead of time. So my apologies as well for this technical glitch.
Sorry, it will come up in just a second, I'm sure. Just
No, you're all good. Does anyone else have another announcement or case share they want to share while we let Thelma sort things out?
I just wanted to say to Thelma, the technology never gets easier, Thelma. So just know you're in good company with making this stuff work. So
thank you. Let's see if I can get it to work.
There is another training that I emailed Athena, but it is a um, family resources general overview for pregnant mothers with toddlers that may be experiencing homelessness or on the verge of homelessness. So it's a really holistic training opportunity, and they are, if you can't attend the one in Salt Lake, they are going to do one in Park City later, which I'll also add the link. And then they're hoping to do one online. So those are really great overall trainings to understand the multitude of services available to those families in that difficult situation.
Oh, great. Thank you, Haley. Thanks for sharing. And is that the one you just put in the chat as well? Okay.
Yes, I just put the link to register and then I emailed you the flyer for it.
Okay, great. Okay.
Okay. Can anybody see it yet?
Yep, we can see the presentation.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, it took a little bit to figure out why it wouldn't work. Okay.
Oh, good.
Okay. So Let me get into it. Okay, so like I said, my name is Thelma Davies, and I am a statewide parent education consultant with the Utah Parent Center. I have been here for 4 years, and it's been great. I have 4 boys, and 3 of them have special needs. They have autism and some health needs that they need a little bit more support with, but they're all over, they're pretty great. And so this is why I do this, and hopefully we can share some great information today for you. Okay, so let's start with building this partnership with the team. So working together is kind of a big process. It's listening to what the team is saying and them listening to you. It's thoughtfully considering other information that they may have and different options, and you are equal partners with the IEP process. So let's kind of get into it. And so I'll start with IDEA and what IDEA is. So IDEA is a free and appropriate education. So FAPE, if you've heard that acronym, then it starts with an appropriate evaluation and then goes into the individualized education program, least restrictive environment, and parent and student participation, and procedural safeguards. So it's kind of some things that all go under IDEA. Okay, so just because I'm having technical issues, can you all still see it? Very okay.
Looks great.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, I'm gonna start. Okay, so now we kind of want to go over the IDEA overview and what that looks like. So there's the different parts to IDEA and who it serves. So we have Part C is the infants and toddlers with the developmental delay. Part B is children and youth with disabilities. Part D is professionals, families, and systems. So we have birth through 2, 3 through 21 for the Part B, which is kind of the main thing most of the parents are looking for when their kids start school. And then there's Part D, which is all ages, which is indirect support. So the plans we use are like the individual family service plans is for Part C, and then the individualized education program is Part B, and then Part D is the funding for training and technical research. That's kind of the overview of those. Like those are just some things, and so we want to make sure that y'all understood those, and we'll just kind of move on because kind of running low on time. Okay, so parents and students' rights. So there are rights that you have with special education, and a lot of parents don't understand that they do have rights. So we just want to make sure that everybody understands their rights and feels included. Okay, so the procedural safeguards are those rights. You have to have notice of procedural safeguards. There's parent participation, confidentiality, informed consent, prior written notice, independent education evaluation, and access to educational records, dispute resolution options. So those are some things that are under that. Your rights allow these families to be part of that decision making. They to understand what services that they get, keeping the educational records private so no information is shared, and then it also allows families to resolve any disagreement that they may have with the team or decisions the team makes. So then parents do also have to receive a copy of their rights annually upon the initial evaluation referral. So when those parents say, I would like a evaluation of my student, that's when they have to give that to them the first time. And then also if the parents do file a complaint, then they have to have another procedural safeguard. And then anytime a parent says, I would like some procedural safeguards, I would like to know what my rights are, then they have to give them to them. Okay, so then we're going to kind of go into now it's called prior written notice. So anytime there's a change in anything that the school does, it's called prior written notice. And so anything that the student, like if they change the placement, if they change the way they um, want to teach the student, or maybe the student feels is kind of um, doing much better in a certain area than before, then they have to give them that notice of what's going on. So they have to identify what the change is, and then like if they decide that they just want to change things, you know, like say a placement or anything like um, services, they have to do another evaluation. And then into that placement, they have to have that data to show that they have reason to change that placement. And it also has to make sure that the free and appropriate education is still applicable in that. So, and then we go into some student participation. So we always want students to participate in their IEP process if they are able to. It helps them to get that autonomy of explaining themselves and what their needs are, and it helps them later in life to understand how to advocate for themselves. Um, so what we want is to explain that process to them. We want to be able to give them some role play ideas of like how it might go or how this might go, what you can do. I have had kids who have done like a whole presentation, like they have some smart boards and they call them, and they had a little presentation up on the smart board of what their preferences were and what he felt like his IEP should have in it, and what he felt like his strengths and weaknesses, challenges, anything like that would be. And then we also try and get them to ask questions. That's really important to make sure that they understand the process. Okay, so now we can talk about initiating the process. So what's called child find is the process that we kind of go through first. So we want to, those local education agencies, they are required to find a student, identify and evaluate that student who they might think could need special education. So if they feel like maybe a student is falling behind, they kind of look at that whole thing and see, is this a student that we need to have evaluated for special education? Can that student just, did that student need services for, you know, just maybe some accommodations? It's kind of how they have to look at it to see what they actually need. But they are required to find those students. So here's the steps to take. So we want to do the evaluation first. So we evaluate, we think, okay, they need they need something. We're not sure what it is, so we do that evaluation. Then, okay, we need that needs a little bit more support in this area. In this area, they need to get some interventions. So then number 3 kind of goes into like what to expect after that. So then we have this is multi-tiered system of supports. This kind of just goes through like what is for all students, and then how they kind of determine what a student might need. So the tier 1 is for every student. Everybody's on the same level. Everybody's doing the same work. Tier 2 is targeted. So only certain students may need a little bit extra reading help, say, or a little bit more behavior help. Then they target those students and they figure out what they would need. And then tier 3 is more for the intensive, the few students that need that extra support. And so that's when they usually evaluate for the IEP. So, and what to expect is we want it has to be free, right? That's the most important part right there, free. And then more than one test, and they have to kind of test in all areas. So every area that they feel like could potentially be something they need, they have to test in that area. And parent input, that's so important because parents know their children the best and know how to help them in at least get them started in what they need. Strengths and needs also goes back to a lot of like data and parent input, and then it is 45 school days, which I mean could technically not sound like a long time, but if you take into consider breaks and everything, it takes quite a while. So it's kind of a process. Okay, so there's some areas that they evaluate in. So health, vision and hearing, social and emotional, cognitive intelligence, academic, speech and language, motor skills, adaptive daily living, and autism specific. So these are just the categories. These are things that they're looking up with. Next is like that independent evaluation. So, um, if they don't agree with what it is, like if the parents are saying we don't agree with this, then they can have an outside opinion kind of thing. So they can say, I don't agree with this evaluation. This is not what I think my student needs. Um, they can say, I would like somebody else who's kind of impartial. And then the schools usually have a list of people that they know of that can do it. Most of the time, it's a psychologist, and so that's usually what they do. Um, it is free if the school says yes. If they don't say yes, if they say no, we are just fine. We're not going to get them any more evaluations. We feel like our evaluations are solid. Then that triggers what we call a due process hearing, and that involves a lot more intensive. And so that just is kind of the order of that. Okay. So now we can talk about like qualifying for services. Okay. Okay, so here are the categories. So in order to qualify under IDEA, these are the categories of eligibility. So they look for things with autism, deaf, blindness, developmental delay, emotional behavior disability, hard of hearing and deafness, intellectual disabilities, multiple disabilities, orthopedic impairment, other health impairment, and specific learning disability. So most of those are self-explanatory. Other health impairment can be anything from just ADHD to like actual health issues that prevent them from learning at the same way their peers do, and that maybe they need extra interventions. And then it's kind of next one. So here's some more of those eligibilities. So there's also the speech language impairment, traumatic brain injury, and then visual impairment, which is including blindness. So developing the plan. So now we're going to work on plan. We've decided they need that IEP, they need that extra support, those interventions. So we're going to go into the plan. So the IEP is a written education plan. It's specially designed instruction. So even though we can get into things like accommodations and all of those kind of things, they can go under the IEP, but it also, for an IEP, has to be that specially designed instruction. So they need that intervention to be able to learn at the same rate as their peers, is how they kind of guide that. It is a guide for their education. And then the learning environment is maybe they can't learn in the gen ed classroom. Maybe it's too noisy or too many kids in one room, and so they can maybe place them in a different area, or maybe it's just maybe for testing, maybe they just need a different area. So that includes that as well. And we do want them to have those high expectations. We want them to be able to reach for those expectations that maybe seem a little harder, but they're there. We have to create this within 30 days. So they have the 45 school days to evaluate. And then once they decide that, yes, they need special education services, then they need to create the IEP within 30 days. That one is calendar days, not school days. Then in place, it has to be in place at the beginning of the year. So there has to be an IEP in place, whether or not it's due, like say every year. It could be in the middle of the year that they start it, that it still would be in compliance in the beginning of the year, so they could start with that. And then we have to have accountability, so there has to be data to collect to make sure that things are working the way they're supposed to. And then it has to be written by the whole team, including the parents. It also has to be completed before they decide what placement the student needs to be in, and then it has to update according to IDEA and state requirements. So the purpose of the IEP is communication and collaboration. We want to be able to communicate with the team and collaborate to find the best solution to help that student. And that's including problem solving, written commitment, and then planning and tool management tools, and then accountability and compliance. So they have to be accountable for what they do and be in compliance with all the federal regulations as well as state. And then there has to be what's called the notice of meeting. So parents get to receive what's called that notice of meeting prior to any IEP meeting. It has to include the time and the date, includes the location where it will be held and who will be attending. So if it's got just, say, just the speech therapist and the special ed person, then the parent can say, no, that's not acceptable. I want this other people to be there. Parents can invite whoever they want. There has to be a representative from the local education agency, whether that's a principal or the special ed director. It has to be somebody like that that has to be in attendance as well. And then this is also informs the parents a right to invite other people. So like we talked about a second ago, it's parents can invite whoever they want, whoever has the best knowledge of their student that they feel like would be important to the team. So here's the components of the IEP. So there's we call it the PLAFA. It's a little bit funky acronym there. It's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. And that identifies the needs. So that tells us that this is what's happening with the student within their day to day. This is how they're functioning. This is the scores for maybe the testing we did on this day or the testing we did on that day. And that kind of drives those goals that we need to put in place. So then we have those annual measurable goals. What's your child's expected to learn in a 12-month period? And then we go into the services. So the instruction of those services and how we meet their needs. And then the supports, which are like the accommodations and modifications, supplementary aids. So if maybe there's a student that needed an AAC device, they could help them with that as well. So let's talk a little bit about supports and modifications. So the changes that need to be made, those are, so modifications are changes that to the curriculum. They alter those learning expectations, and it lowers the academic standards that are required. And then it tailors the instructions to that student's needs. So an example would be like simplify or reduce the amount of work. They could do like pass fail instead of like A, B, or C. No or reduced homework, and then there's classroom behavior expectations in maybe a behavior plan. So supports and accommodations would be how a student learns and how they assess that. Some examples are like breaking work into smaller tasks. We call that chunking. There's frequent reminders of like, are they on task? Are they needing help? There's extra time to complete work, giving tests maybe orally instead of written, or giving them that assistive technology that they might need. Some special factors are like that they consider the student's behavior. So if they have behavior issues that affects their learning, they could maybe do a behavior intervention plan. They could also have to consider like language of the student. Maybe they don't speak English or they're still learning English. That's a consideration. The students need like so then the team discussion around these are would be like, does the student need support for that behavior? Does the student need help in understanding the language? So those are just a couple examples. You can see that there's more with blind, visually impaired, communication, deaf, hard of hearing, and assistive technology. We kind of go through it all, but there's just kind of a lot. So we'll move on a little bit. Okay, so now we'll talk about placement. Um, okay, so we want to place students in what we call least restrictive environment. So that's where the educational services happen. So whether they're in the general ed like setting with their peers and they just get extra support, they get extra maybe some time to get extra instruction, that's where that would happen. Or maybe they have to go into a separate room, like maybe the special ed room, if they have one at the school. Not all schools have them, but it's just wherever they can to meet their needs. But we really, really want the students to be with their peers as much as possible because that is so important for them to be in that learning environment with the same age peers. Okay, so here's what we call the placement continuum. So it starts in the regular classroom. This is where all students are. If they can't do that, then there is a special classroom that they probably could go to. I mean, I'm not saying all of it because sometimes if say it's a charter school, sometimes they just don't have those. But usually there is a special class. And then there's also the special schools, which are for more specialized kids that need that extra support that are not able to function in a traditional school. And then there's also home instruction. A lot of times we get kids with the special healthcare needs that need that home instruction, so that's a part of it. And then there's the hospitals and institutions for those that need to get that which is not very often, but is an option. Okay. So here is the placement determination. So it's based on the IEP goals. It has to be as close to their home as possible. So if they can go to their boundary school, that's where they like them to go. But they have to consider if there is any harmful effects, and then that's how they determine the placement. So now we're going to talk a little bit about transition. So there's early intervention to preschool is kind of the little bit. That's how we start. Then we go into preschool and kindergarten, and then elementary to middle school, and then junior high into middle school to high school, and then high school to post high and beyond post high. And there's some different programs out there that are a little bit past post high, but generally those are not in the free realm. So that ends at 22 in Utah for free and appropriate education. So in here we go. This is just how it goes, our little cycle. It's the referral, which is the child time, and then it goes into evaluations, and then eligibility, and the IEP, and the placement, and then the annual review. So in the annual review, that is every year. So every year the student has to have a review to see, they just kind of review the IEP to make sure that they still qualify for those services, and if there are any additional needs, or maybe there are some things that they have done well at that they don't need anymore, that they can review those every year and decide that. And then every 3 years is when they have to have their big review. That's the big one where they retest everything if they can. If they have to, they don't have to sometimes. They can go by that data, but they generally do to just see where the student is and what their needs are so that they can make the appropriate placement and give them the appropriate services. Okay, so this is our book. This is our Parents as Partners. You can scan this if you have any questions, and it takes you to this book that we have. That's kind of what we go by. It tells you everything about special education. It walks you through the entire process. And and then you can get on our mailing list if you're not already. And we are on all the social medias. Okay. And does anybody have questions? No. Okay. No questions?
Group is exceptionally quiet today.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions for Thelma?
Yeah, this is Carolyn. Sorry, I couldn't get off mute, but Thelma, thank you so much for this. How often is a child's primary care provider involved in the process for IEPs? And is that a useful thing or not?
Actually, I don't know on the like how often. It just depends on the um, student and their needs. But yes, it is very important. If the student has a primary care doctor that they're working with, then we always recommend them to um, talk to that provider and make that provider part of the team because they have all that valuable information that helps for that student. Especially if there's a health plan involved where, maybe the student needs yeah, more support with health issues like diabetes or maybe just an asthma and they need that plan. It's great for them to have that doctor as a resource to be able to talk to. And also if we always recommend if a student is struggling and the parents are starting the IEP process, but they've been in contact regularly with their doctor, then we usually recommend that that doctor um, explain the diagnosis if they have one and the needs that they see. And that helps the team with gathering that data in order to help determine if the student is an IEP.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great question. Thanks, Carolyn. Anyone else have a question?
Mm, Um, this is Ingrid Contreras from Summit Pediatrics. Thank you for the presentation. I'm working with a patient who has an IEP. Um, he has been diagnosed with autism, and he is also has issues with his nutrition. He's malnourished, and he has a very specific nutrition plan. And our his pediatrician has written a lot of letters to let the school know that about his diagnosis and his plan of care. Is very specific. He needs to have snacks at certain hours. But it seems like, from what mom tells us, there's no one at the school that makes sure that he has the snacks at a certain hour. Is there a way that that you would suggest that we make sure that this kid gets the help he needs at school with his meal plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So does the student have an IEP now?
Yes, he does.
Okay, so it would need to be written in the IEP. And if it is, and he also should have that health plan. I'm guessing he does. They're supposed to be doing, and they kind of work together where in the health plan it would line everything out that he has to do and what he needs. And that also goes into the IEP. The IEP could have, say, like there has to be a specific person that checks on him, not specific person, but like somebody they have to have somebody, maybe just a para or someone like that, that has the knowledge that's trained to help that student at those specific times. So if it is in his IEP, if it's written very specifically like that, then the school has to follow it or they're not in compliance, and that's a problem. They don't generally like to be out of compliance. So we want them to be in that. So if it's written in there and the parents still can't get any help from the school, they are welcome to call us and we can definitely help navigate that because that's kind of what we do. We help them figure out like what's going on, if it's written in the IEP the correct way, or maybe because sometimes the parents think it's one way, but that's actually written a different way. And so the school's not necessarily following the correct order because they're feeling like this is the way it's supposed to be. So we just want to make sure that it's in the correct way and that everything is the right, written in the right way, very distinctly. So
Oh,
if the parent needs help, have her call us for
yes,
sure.
we did give the mom your number, so you may hear from her. Yes.
Oh, good, good. Yeah,
Yes.
we can definitely help her.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Natalie, do you want to go?
I just wanted to comment on that last problem. If I were them, the first person I would reach out to is the school nurse and start there because it might be exactly what she's talking about. Like it's not written appropriately, but I think the person that might be the most helpful to you would be the school nurse. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you. They have, and it's still happening. Yeah.
This is Eric Christensen. I'm speaking as the father of an an adult with diabetes. My middle son in elementary school had type 1 diabetes and needed to be able to have snacks. We had to have insulin monitored, all sorts of things. And at that time, we actually relied an awful lot on the classroom teacher. There was a special ed teacher who was responsible to ensure that Charlie was taking his insulin at appropriate times and verifying his carbohydrate, rates and things like that. So I think a lot of times too, even just working with the school, is a great way to try to get folks who can, help to focus on that. Even people up in the office, secretaries and stuff were helpful with Charlie just to make sure that he got snacks when he needed them and that his, blood was tested at appropriate times. I don't think it's the best solution in the world, but I know a lot of times, building a good relationship with the school, talking, as Natalie said, with the school nurse, making sure the medical plan and the, either 504 or IEP is in place with, things clearly written out and, who's responsible for what, can really be a big help.
Thank you.
It looks like we had a case share after all, so that was great. Thanks, Ingrid, for sharing and everybody else for chiming in and helping out on that. And then Gretchen put in the comments that says most schools don't have a dedicated nurse in Utah, so that isn't always an option too. Good reminder. Does anybody else have any final questions for Thelma? I am going to switch back to my screen really quick and just before we close out today, just thank Thelma again for joining us, and we'll be sure and have the recording up. I'll send the email out with all the resources and announcements we talked about today. And then our September meeting is going, like I said, going to be about ABA services specific for Medicaid patients. We have somebody from the Medicaid office coming to talk about that. That was a follow-up from a meeting we had a couple months ago where people wanted more information specific to the ABA services for Medicaid patients. And we encourage you to stay in touch in between with our listserv and our Facebook group. So thanks everyone for joining us today, and we will see you all in September.